boldly engaging the mindless propaganda of our time, apparently with reason. This is Rage of the Age.
This is Rage of the Age, and we have with us today a Harvard graduate, an author of 39 children's books, an author of Searching for God in the Garbage. I want to introduce to you today Bracha Goetz. Bracha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Now, you grew up, as you've relayed to me earlier, as in a liberal home, a liberal Jewish home, but now you're a conservative. Let's start from the beginning. The home you grew up in a liberal Jewish home, which I'm not familiar with, but explain to me what that's kind of like growing up in that atmosphere.
Yeah, okay. I really never talked about this, so I'm excited to be speaking about it now. I was raised to believe, in equality and helping everybody. I was very involved with feminism. Let's see. I was like, on protest marches with the Vietnam War and stuff like that. And
Okay.
I was hanging out like by Berkeley in California. And I remember even like the first Earth Day, all kinds of things like that I was loving very much. Environmentalism, which I'm still very involved with. I love that. And it was like a life of just, I felt like we were very into civil rights. That was something that we were extremely motivated to get involved with. Let's see. So I'm talking about the 60s when it was a very exciting kind of revolutionary time. And then I went to Harvard in the 70s, and that was also a very exciting place to be. And I was, searching for meaning during those times. And I was brought up in a liberal Jewish home. We called it liberal then. Now it's called progressive. Like the name has changed, But and going to rallies, right, anti-war rallies. At Harvard, again, I was searching into all different religions. I was searching into different types of Christianity and Buddhism, searching for meaning, because I didn't think that my own religion was spiritual or meaningful. And I just saw it as a cultural kind of thing. And so I just kept searching into everything. And that's kind of why I went to Harvard too, searching for wisdom and education and meaning. And, when I couldn't find it in other ways, I just kept going. I remember also like an interesting experience at Harvard is that I was invited to this very exclusive garden party where there were children of like the most famous people like the Kennedys, Rockefellers, Moynihans, these people. And, just getting there felt like I'd reached the pinnacle of where we were striving to be, and like realizing that I was up there and there was nothing up there because everybody there just seemed like anybody else and just kind of looking for more as well. Right. And I tell the story that on this beautiful day in May, there was suddenly a thunderstorm. It came pouring down and washed out the whole party. And I felt like, wow, these powerful people, they can't stop the rain from coming down on their parties. Like there's something more. I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is, but I'm still searching. So during this whole search for more meaning in life, where I actually got to fulfill and see that up there at the Mirage, there was nothing up there. I looked like successful on the outside, but inside I wasn't feeling successful at all. I was feeling very lost and desperate. Wow. And I was developing different kind of like, I would say food addictions, or they could be called eating disorders, whatever, like anorexia, where a person like starves themselves, or binge eating. So one or the other. I was doing one or the other, and it was like this desperate, what I didn't understand until later, was that it was a desperate search to nourish my hungry soul.
Now I got my ears perked a little bit. I'm interested in because the way you explain your initial direction in life, if you left it just like that, it sounded really exciting, right? You talked about all these events that you were involved with, these marches, these causes you were supporting, and in my outside observation, I would look at it and say that's where you find your meaning, and that's what you've put yourself into. Obviously, you get something out of that, and but you're saying the whole time you're involved with these things, it's like there was no meaning to it.
Well, good point. There was some meaning to it. Caring for
Okay.
other people, having compassion. These were things I cared about. But
Mhm.
what I realized as time went on is that I didn't know right from wrong. Everything was relative. I didn't know, like, my morals just kept slipping away because there was no black and white. Everything was gray. As I
Mhm.
kept going, I didn't understand, is there any absolute truth to this, or is everything relative? At Harvard, I could get A's on all my essays by showing how everything was relative, and this is related to that, and everything. I just figured out. I didn't even read the books. I'd read the beginning, I'd read the end, and I'd figure out how I needed to just, get A's on all my assignments by, like,
Wow.
that was kind of the truth. The truth was seeing how everything was relative. In my search, I actually took courses at the Harvard Divinity School, which was a graduate school, and
Yeah.
I took school at the Harvard School of Public Health. Like, I didn't just do undergraduate. Even while I was an undergraduate, I was taking some courses at upper level schools like the Graduate School of Education, really searching for more, the absolute truth and wisdom. And even at the Divinity School, I was really disappointed.
Wow.
We were studying the Bible. It was like Bible 101 or something. And
Yeah.
they were analyzing how there were different authors and proving how there were different authors of different
Mhm.
sections of the Bible. And here I was searching for something to nourish my soul, which was really the part that was very hungry, and it wasn't doing it. So meanwhile, I was actually getting sicker and sicker, even though I looked like I was becoming more and more successful. I went on
Mhm.
to medical school after graduating. I graduated with honors from Harvard. I went on to medical school. There I was studying to be a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
By this point, I was really doing crazy, bizarre behaviors, all as part of an enslavement into this food addiction, which made no sense. I mean, here I look like this person who had everything, and
Right.
yet I didn't feel that way inside.
That's
And
interesting because it's irony. It's absolute irony that you go to this prestigious school called Harvard, and you're specifically taking courses to get direct, absolute answers, but their answers was everything's relative. And that just blows my mind. And you came out with honors by basically, can I say it this way, telling them what they wanted to hear about things being relative?
yes, I could see, and I enjoyed doing that.
Wow.
I love seeing how this is related to that and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I had a blast. I'm very good at seeing the big picture, but the biggest picture of all didn't make any sense to me. I
Mhm.
knew I was missing something, so the search went on. And what happened was, the summer after my first year of medical school, it was really funny. I myself went to visit a therapist. I'd never been to a therapist. I
Mhm.
finally divulged all the crazy stuff I was doing to this psychiatrist. He happened to be Japanese. And he said to me, I think you're crazier. I think you're crazier than you are. I think when you go to Israel this summer, I had plans to go to Israel for 6 weeks. He
Right.
said, I think you're going to find yourself spiritually. I think there's something spiritual that you're really looking for. It was really amazing. And I thought they were going to put me away in a hospital. I thought, like, I was like really,
Wow.
but he said, no, just go there and see what you find. So, it was really interesting. My mother said to me, do whatever you want in Israel. I was going to volunteer at Hadassah Hospital on the
Mhm.
oncology ward, talking to people, counseling people. And she said, do whatever you want, but just don't contact this one guy I knew since childhood who became a religious fanatic, So, of course,
just don't talk to him.
right away, I made a beeline. I contacted him, and he said,
Yeah.
I said, I need to be able to help my patients someday and help them. What's the meaning to life? He said, yeah, don't worry about your patients. I'm going to help you find it out. So he took me to these 2 schools for like late beginners to learn about the basics of Judaism, which I'd never learned about.
Really?
And when I came into these classes, half the words were in Hebrew. I didn't know what they were talking about. And I felt this joy in my soul like I had never felt. And I had loved parts of other religions. Parts of other religions gave me some parts that I really that were real nourishing, but it wasn't a puzzle piece fit like this was for my particular soul. And when it happened, I was drawing pictures in the classes. I draw creatures, and the creature was jumping off the world saying, yay! That's how I felt. I felt like I finally got the guidelines for living that I was searching for. Like there really was a purpose to life. And I found out what it was. And I was shocked. I was astounded to find out what the purpose of life was, but it completely changed my life.
That's interesting because listening to you talk, you keep saying things like compassion and love. These are things that were very, probably still are a big part of you. You wanted to express compassion and love, but you found ways to do that where they removed right and wrong. They remove, you have love, but truth's not included. And it's almost like, how do you have truth and compassion with no certainty by which to judge it? And was that what you were maybe wrestling with?
I love that. I love the way you put it. Right. There were no guidelines. I didn't know I could do anything. I felt, I remember there were drunk guys that were driving me home from dates, people I didn't know. It didn't matter who I was with, the relationships. I mean, everything had gotten there were no morals left. And I felt that the world had turned gray. I was a person that, loved life as a child, but without meaning, it was becoming more and more painful for me to go on. That's how I felt. And I know everybody's not like that. But all I could say is certain souls, I think, are more exposed than others. And my soul was like right at the surface. I could feel the pain of not understanding the purpose of life. And I have a feeling that there are many addicts that feel the same way. I think that addicts try to fill the emptiness with immediate pleasure because they don't know how to bring lasting pleasure into their lives. So I feel an addict will keep things going, trying to keep the immediate pleasure lasting because they don't know how to bring lasting pleasure into life. And that's what I finally discovered.
So you were wrestling with, it sounds like an eating disorder. Is that right?
Kind of, yeah. I was never diagnosed.
Okay.
And I was never like emaciated like an anorexic, and I was never obese either because I was doing one thing or the other. It was not normal eating, but I was either like starving myself with crazy dieting or I was binge eating. And it was all like a desperate search for pleasure or control in a world that I felt was out of control. And I'm saying I feel that it was a metaphoric expression of what I was going through inside.
It's like you were pushing boundaries, trying to find boundaries.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. So growing up in a progressive Jewish home then, it sounded like there was not much instruction on the Jewish religion itself, that this was mainly just a cultural, we're Jews sort of thing, but that's where it ended. Is that what that was like?
Yes, and my parents wanted me to do certain Jewish things, but I said, why? Why is it important to keep being Jewish? Why? They didn't have answers because they were very sweet people, but they themselves had no education in Judaism. They had nothing to give over to me about why it was important to be Jewish. So I felt, I don't need this, I'm just going to shirk this. I don't need to be doing this. And it wasn't like there was no concept. People didn't talk about God. That was a word that was not used. People didn't discuss those kind of things. It was like, it was more about cultural things that we kept doing, like Hanukkah or Passover. But why? I didn't want to keep doing things for no reason.
Right. That's interesting. So you would do things like the Passover and Hanukkah and Purim and all these Jewish observations, which have meaning behind them, and have no idea why you're doing them.
Exactly. And I wasn't interested. Once I became a teenager, I wasn't doing these things anymore. Right.
Wow. So it's just how can I say this? Just a repetition of just doing it just because that's what we've done.
Right.
And not even knowing what you're observing or why you're doing it or the implication behind it.
Right. It becomes like a rote thing. And again, I wanted to understand why. I didn't want to be doing it unless there was a purpose. So I was searching for the purpose.
When did it click in your head that was really what you were looking for? Because I mean, you must have gone some time without realizing that's what you needed, even though that's what you were looking for. What was like the certain things that were starting to really click home to you to look for this meaning?
Right. So in my memoir, Searching for God in the Garbage, I don't write long books. I write these short children's books.
Right.
I didn't write the book. It wrote itself because it's a compilation. When years later, I found my diaries, I found my journals, I found my letters that describe the process of developing the food addictions and then how I overcame them. And I saw that if I put it all together, then everybody would understand the process. And it's not just unique to me. It's a universal process of how does a person develop addictions and then how do you heal. So you could see from age 12 on that the awareness began that something was missing in my life, but I didn't know what it was.
And at what point then in that effort to find it and search it? I mean, you've done all these things. You were involved with things. You've gone to Harvard. You went to Israel. What was there like a sudden lightning epiphany, or did you just suddenly wake up and decide I have purpose?
Yes, in Israel that summer, where I was supposed to be for 6 weeks, I came back 10 years later.
10 years later.
Yeah.
A little off. Yeah.
I did not. I took a year's leave of absence from medical school, but I never went back. My life went on a complete detour into a spiritual realm, and I finally got the nourishment that I was craving. That's why the book explains, why did the food addictions go away when my soul finally found the nourishment it wanted? Because there was no need anymore. Once you nourish your soul, then there's no need for the addictions. So I got the nourishment. First of all, I went to these wonderful schools with other searching young Jewish people that also were idealistic types looking for meaning like I was. And
Okay.
I loved the other people in the school, and I loved the teachers who were devoted to helping everybody. And there was one special rabbi that I met. He's no longer alive, Rabbi Noach Weinberg. And he taught about what the purpose of life. He summed it up like this. This is amazing. The purpose of life is to experience the greatest pleasure possible. Now, this is based on ancient mystical wisdom from the Kabbalah. It's not off the top of his head or my head. This is like such ancient wisdom that it comes from, like, when the world was created, when the universe was created. Really, what we're here for is to experience the greatest pleasure possible in life. And that's so not what we learn. And what's meant by that, what brings us the greatest pleasure in life? It's lasting pleasure. It's filling our souls, because really we are spiritual beings, but we don't recognize that. we are spiritual beings just here in physical bodies while we're in this world for a limited amount of time. And when I realized that, when I was taught that, when I finally got this ancient wisdom, that's how I was able to heal. And that's what I'm sharing with other people. There's basically 5 levels to the pleasure ladder, and there's 5 levels to the human soul, and they correspond. So as we bring greater and greater pleasures into our lives, it uplifts our soul, and that's what we're all here for, to let our souls shine, and by letting our souls shine, we help other souls to shine too.
Did you have a concept of God when you were younger, or is that just
Well, a
were
little
you
bit.
agnostic, atheistic? Was you kind of wasn't sure about it? What was your stance to begin with, and did that eventually change into something more?
Yes, my father, he called himself an agnostic.
Mhm.
He was such a sweet person. I used to sit and I'd talk to him. I say, "Do you believe in God?" He said, "No, I'm an agnostic. I don't know if there's a God or not." And I said, "So why do you keep living?" I was asking these kind of questions. I said, "So why do you want to live?" He
Wow.
said, "It's like watching a TV show. I just want to know what's going to happen next. So that's why I keep living." And that was just not enough for me. I was like,
Hmm.
that's not it. There's got to be more to life than just watching a TV show of, watching this life as a movie or something. What are we here for? So
Wow.
basically, that's how I was brought up. Did I have a sense of God? I mean, maybe I didn't know what to believe. I was just searching for that. Sometimes I'd say some prayers in bed at night, but I didn't
Mhm.
really know if God existed. And
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
yeah,
That's interesting. So you were saying prayers, not knowing there's a God. Did they
yeah,
teach you how to pray? Is that something you just decided to do on your own?
I learned how to read Hebrew, but again, it didn't
Mm.
mean anything to me, the words. And I didn't know what I was saying. And,
Oh,
and,
okay.
and I would say these prayers almost like in a superstitious kind of way, like if I don't say it, maybe something bad will
So,
happen to me. Stuff
uh,
like there was no real understanding that this world was created for our joy, that the Almighty created us all just to experience pleasure, that's what we're here for. Like, why do parents create children? What do parents want for their children? They want their children to experience the greatest pleasure possible in life. And that's what the Almighty wants from us. And we've gone so far off course. We're really just here to enjoy and have gratitude. And and I learned that that's the essence of Judaism. Like the word in the center of Judaism is Yehudi Hoda'ah, is gratitude. That the whole way to have pleasure in life is to have gratitude, recognizing that everything comes from a source.
so you were reciting Hebrew prayers, having no idea what they were saying. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah.
Wow. So it's, I guess a correspondence I'm thinking of in my head would be like someone, maybe like in a Catholic church reciting the Latin and having no idea what it says. It's kind of like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Well, what prompted you to do that if you're in a home that doesn't normally pray?
Um, like 2 days a year we would go to the synagogue, so I
Mm.
or
2
like
days a year? That's like Christians go to church.
yeah, it was yeah. And
Wow,
And like I
man.
had learned these things, I guess, in the few hours I spent in Hebrew school, which I always tried to get out of going to when I was a little kid. I learned, yeah.
My goodness. So, um, so you consider yourself now a conservative?
Yes. Politically, you mean?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. Mhm. So
Because
was you like liberal or progressive for quite some time, and you've become a conservative over the years?
when I became an Orthodox Jew,
Oh,
yes.
so that corresponded like almost immediately with that transition.
Yes, because then there was a defined guidelines. about life. It was a totally different perspective. I understood then that there was an absolute truth, that there was right and wrong,
Right.
and I had the guidelines. It was like I couldn't even fly because there were no strings attached. Now, when I have like guidelines helping me to fly, or I look at it as a ballet. I couldn't even dance because I didn't know the basic steps.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got the basic steps, there's a structure, there's a discipline to it.
Mm.
Then I could dance in this world, but I needed that discipline. And now that I have that in my life, I won't like fly off the handle. There's a structure within which I can operate and be creative, and that's what I really was craving.
And you believe that you didn't have that with the liberal mindset you had before, that you had no discipline, I guess, is
I, I,
direction?
I didn't have a sense of what was right and wrong, and that was a problem. You know, my parents had it because they
Okay.
grew up that way, but I already was in a new generation, and it was all free then. This was Woodstock. You know, this was a whole different way of living, which
Right.
was, again, a very exciting to me to have all that, quote, freedom. But what is freedom? I have now a whole new understanding of what freedom is. Freedom is when your soul can control your body. My body was out of control.
Mm.
And that's how it is for an addict. It's a compulsion to do things that you know have unhealthy consequences for you, and you're still doing them even though they're bad for you. So um, there's no longer that, because now I have the fulfillment in my life. Right.
Wow. That's an amazing transformation of, because usually politics might change over years. You make it sound like it was a pretty quick thing. The discovery of purpose and right and wrong, absolute standards just totally changed your whole political outlook. That's just
Yes, and
interesting to
I'll
me.
give you an example too. Like, for instance, I feel like with the conservative ideology, um, the understanding is that we help people to help themselves. That is the highest level. We have something called tzedakah. We have 8 rungs on a ladder of tzedakah, which is badly defined as charity, in a better sense defined as justice. And right now there's all these social justice movements.
Right.
So what the highest level of justice is, according to ancient Jewish teachings, is to help a person to help themselves. The lowest level is when you keep giving handouts to people, and they feel disgusting about themselves, ashamed about themselves, embarrassed. They don't have a good sense of themselves. So I believe that the conservative ideology is about helping people to help themselves, and that in Judaism is the highest level of giving to someone. So that, again, that's an example of why it aligns with my that's how my religious views align with the
Mhm.
political views of conservative. So we were very much into, when I was growing up, just help people, just give out and
Right.
handouts, you know.
Right.
But I believe that it's helping people, educating people to help themselves, giving them what they um, so that they will not be dependent any longer. And creating a dependence is what I find to be one of the main problems of a liberal ideology, which is called progressive, but I don't really like calling it progressive, because I think it's a regressive way to
Right.
treat
Right.
people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely don't see a progress there at all. It's just, I mean, it's a title you claim for yourself, but I don't see the progress there for many of the reasons that you've stated. I mean, the old adage of, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day; teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. That's what you're talking about. Uh, I'm curious though, when you was in Israel over there during that time, Was there a lot of thought processes of, like there is now, where there's this kind of hatred towards Israel in universities? Was that prevalent back in your day, and did you take that with you when you went to Israel?
That's a new thing that's happened now.
Really?
We
Okay.
are now, um, the anti-Zionist movement is, it's part of, it's been co-opted, by, I think, other organizations. What do they call that? Transactional, where you take in these other groups and you put them all together. But it reminds me actually of, like, in the 60s, though, there was this folk singer named Alan Sherman, who was Jewish. He was actually a math professor at Harvard, and he had this song, that, the Shiites hate the Hindus and the Muslims hate but everybody hates the Jews. So, like, that was even true. Yeah, that was even true for centuries. I mean, it's been true forever,
It
but
has been true forever. Yeah.
exactly. So that
Yeah.
has always been the case. But really, it's because why is that? That's something I was also fascinated by. Why is it that everybody hates the Jews? What is it about us that people hate?
Mhm.
And what I was just recently, and I think this is so true, is that Hitler had it right. He hated the Jews for the right reason. He hated the Jews because he said the Jews are the conscience of the world, the conscience. We have a set of morals that we want to be a light to the world and spread in or around the world. And he believed that every man should be able to, live immorally if wanted. He was really getting rid of all religions,
Right. Yeah.
but he especially hated the Jewish people. So, it's we've always had this role, but again, we've gone so far off course from our role, and that's why I was really happy to be able to go back to the source and learn what we're really here for.
Because I'm thinking of current times now, and I'm on the outside looking in. I don't grow up in these circles. I don't uh, work within that culture or nothing. But it baffles me in the modern sense, in current day, how Jews could support liberals who generally want to destroy Israel
Oh,
and hate Jews.
yes.
Right.
Yes. And I'll tell you why. Again, this is all because Jewish people, I feel Jewish people, and I was that person back then, so I totally understand the mindset.
Yeah.
It's a wanting to help people. It's a wanting to be good and kind and merciful, and yet you don't have the education about how to do it best. And so it's being done in such a mixed up way. It's not helping the people that you think you're giving handouts to. It's helping them to stay in the same place, not elevate their lives. And yet you think you're doing something good, but you're not. And if these Jewish people would have more Jewish education, I think they would be able to understand that. But they really are merciful, kind people that want to help.
Right.
Just
Right.
misinformed.
Well, and again, that's the irony, because because I'm in Christian circles, and the people I hang out with, want to support Israel and believe in its rights to exist, and
Yes.
we don't appreciate anti-Semitic posturing of any kind, and we have different views of the Jewish people than others do, who want to destroy Israel, who want to just who hate the Jews. The whole world hates the Jews, but we're baffled that it's almost like we're more determined to support Israel and the Jews than some Jews are. That's what's confusing to us.
But it's Jews that just haven't really learned the Torah. Because when you understand it better, you understand that the Palestinian people, the reason that the Jewish people are supportive of, who are liberal Jews who are supportive of the Palestinians, is
Right.
because the Palestinian people have been so mistreated
Right.
by their rulers. They are
Yes.
they are kept in a horrible state. It's not the Jewish people do so many things to try to help the Palestinian people, and and they are meant to have their own land, but instead they are kept in this area
Mhm.
in Israel on purpose to be a thorn constantly,
Right.
when they could be accepted back into Jordan, where they were a piece of Jordan to begin with. But Jordan no way wants that, because they want to keep sticking it on Israel. There's so many ways to accommodate. There's plenty of oil money, and there's plenty of money, and they don't have to live in squalor and in poverty as so many do. They could have wonderful lives, but instead they're kept as downtrodden people, in the same way that we keep people in ghettos here in America,
Mhm.
in the same
Right.
way, with the handouts that are not helping them to become self-sufficient, to have a land of their own. And it could so easily happen, but on purpose it isn't, to keep the anti-Semitism going, against the Jewish people, the anti-Zionism. It's a whole, and it takes on different forms throughout the ages of why to hate the Jewish people. It's one reason or another, and it just changes, as it's politically popular, whatever the reason is. But
Right.
but really all goes back to that we are people that wanted to share the Almighty's moral lessons with the world. And that's really what we're here for. And if we're doing our mission, then we'll be in a better place, the more we can stick to that. So honestly, that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of spreading it around, like what we're really here for. I feel like that's one of the most valuable things I could do. And what was my whole purpose in life, to go to Harvard and have this liberal background, in order to be able to shed more light on how we could live more fulfilling lives, and fulfill our purpose here.
I definitely agree that there's a lot of agitation done with the Palestinians on purpose to create the thorn in the side, to agitate them, because that creates generations of people they can recruit to throw at Israel.
Exactly.
You keep them in these conditions, and I don't know. It's almost like they're the mob boss. They're the ones who hurt you, but then they say, "Well, it's their fault," and we'll help you fight them, but you're the one causing the trouble in the first place. But I can't believe in this day and age that people cannot figure that out yet with all the information at our fingertips.
No, because as you know, the news is so slanted, and it's very hard to get information, um, without the slants. Everything is being
Well,
controlled.
I would say in the 70s that was a more realistic statement, but now we have access to so much information around the news. It's almost like some people don't want to use it. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. People listen to what they want to hear, and
Yeah, well,
most of the but most of the
yeah.
news stations are not. And I mean, if you Google things, you won't believe this.
Mhm.
Just before this, just before coming on the show, I Googled Jews as a merciful people. I wanted to see some quotes about that.
Ah,
And what came up as all the Google listings that came up first were Jews are unmerciful. No
right,
mercy. Jews have no mercy. That's all that came up. So yeah,
right.
the information is there
Yeah,
someplace, but
someplace,
you
yeah.
got to really search for it, because right, what comes up are these awful things. I mean, the anti-Semitism was the first
Right.
stuff that was coming up when I was looking
Wow.
for it.
Yeah, well, that's why I use different search engines, because Google definitely pads their searching for certain uh, displays that come up first. That's for sure. I've seen that absolutely. uh, I just I just hope that more people do find purpose in their life. That all I know is there's a lot of ways it can go, but what's not really working for us is this whole idea of relativity, this whole idea of No, I mean, even now, with you can't even tell if you're a boy or a girl, even though it should be definitive. It's relative.
Yeah, and this is something that I can't talk about in public. You're
Yeah,
not allowed to say those kind of things because then you're considered somehow I'm going to say a racist,
yeah.
and
You're hateful,
really,
right?
and more than that, what else? All the different terms would be,
Hmm.
just thrown in my direction. You can't even say the word God. I mean, that's why the title of my book is "Searching for God in the Garbage." I knew that God was being thrown away. So I went
Wow.
searching in the garbage to find God. That's what I had to do. And that was my search because it's being tossed away. And we have to feel afraid to speak about certain things, or
Hmm.
I would be attacked for talking about things like that. There's something called the genderbread man that's being
Oh
taught
Lord,
in kindergarten. The genderbread man. So you can see this is to confuse the youngest children possible.
right.
This is why I'm writing picture books for the youngest children possible. This is who we have to get through to
Hmm.
because what we teach young children is engraved on their souls. We have to give them the nourishment from the very beginning. And believe me, many publishers won't publish my books. It's only specific publishers.
Right.
All the liberal publishers won't publish my books. I have to go to small presses, and but I do whatever I can to get the word out.
Right.
That's what we have to do, little by little. I um, that's the only way, person by person, we have to help each soul to shine.
Yeah, person by person, community by community. Because in the end, these big apparatuses of connecting with people, in my opinion, can only go so far. You have to have that connection uh, to be a part of expressing our humanity with one another.
Yes, and that's the thing. As big as anybody gets, the Almighty is beyond bigger than all of these
That's
people,
right.
So there's nothing to worry about. We just have to do
Yeah.
what we are here to do.
Yeah. As Moses said, let me see your glory. And God only shows just a little bit, and it was enough for Moses under his rock to endure. God is so much bigger for sure. Bracha, it's been wonderful having you with me today and talking about this. And I really appreciate you sharing this with us.
A total pleasure. I'll come back anytime.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
Welcome to the essay segment. I tell you what, it was a really big eye opener, I suppose. I don't know if it didn't really catch me by surprise, but it was definitely interesting to hear some of the aspects of her life, comparing it to my own experiences and then observations I have made being in different parts of this country and even in other parts of the world. That there's this interesting play out that people do that are simply only reinforced by culture, but yet no one knows why they do it. Or they just do it because that's just what we do. And I find it fascinating that we can get stuck in such ruts. And this is irregardless of, this isn't something that, as in her case, that only certain Jewish families do this. Because I've seen it in Christian families, I've seen it in Muslim families. This notion that we don't know why what we do, uh, and I find that amazing. It's astounding to me that we do things and have no clue as to why we do it. I've heard this story more than once, actually, in numerous illustrations. I don't even know where it originated, but it's pretty popular. From I've heard it quite a few times. As the story goes, there's this family cooking ham right? And this young daughter has always been taught they cut off the end of the ham. And it just dawned on her, why do I cut off the end of the ham? And of course, she asked her mother, and her mother had no clue. And I don't know. That's just what we've always done. And she's like, yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Why do we do it? And then, she asked her mother, and apparently the reason is, well, I used to cut off the end of the ham because, the pan we had, you could only fit so much in it. And it was so that the ham could fit into the pan, back in the day. But, the end had been cut off and continuously done for one reason. But here you are a couple generations later still doing it and have no clue as to why you're doing it, right? But of course, then the conclusion is, well, just leave the ham together and put it in a bigger pan, right? And that's sort of what she was saying is she would do these Jewish things and have no clue why she's doing it. There's no meaning behind it. It wasn't explained. It's just what you did. I remember times being in Iraq, talking with the people over there at times, especially with the interpreters and some of their Jundis, their soldiers, and we'd get to know each other and explain, our lives and how it is there and how it was in the States. And we'd always, try to explain our different ways we do things, the way we think and operate and such. And I had come to learn that, even amongst the Muslims over there, a bunch of them would do things and not know why they did it. It's just what they did, and even things they were supposed to do, they didn't do. For example, Friday is usually the big mosque day for Muslims. And I noticed over there, a lot of them don't go to the mosque on Fridays. And I asked, isn't that what y'all are supposed to do? But it was sort of like the thing like, yeah, well, nobody does it, but on big days, they would go and do the Muslim things. And it became just a cultural thing. And it's the same with Christians. She said that, about twice a year they would go to synagogue. And I was just, I laughed, but because, amongst Christians, it's a running joke that you have those who go to church only during Christmas and Easter, right? The big celebrations. And even then, how many of them go and have no clue what they're really celebrating, right? We have Christmas, and how is it portrayed? It's just being, where they celebrate, the secular version, if you will, is to celebrate love and, just being nice to each other. It's the season of giving and, and gifts, of course. It's all about the gifts and the giving and the parties and people just do it just because it's that time of year to do, right? But do they know what's celebrated? The birth of Christ. It's the birth of Christ, the Messiah. That's what it celebrates. But how many people will go through it and have no clue that that's actually the whole point of the celebration? With Easter, of course. And I grew up in a family that didn't go to church. And yet, just because of just the culture we grew up in, we would do the Christmas thing, and I'd have it was just gifts. That's all it was. It was just, family got together, big meal, we exchanged gifts. There's this Santa Claus guy and some reindeer, which caused a lot of confusion. But, and that was it. And I liked it because, hey, presents, right? And then when Easter came around, that was even more confusing. We back in the day, we would paint the eggs, hard-boiled eggs. We'd paint them, make different designs. Our parents would hide them, and we go to find them, and then we would have a feast with the family, and that was Easter. I had no clue why we did that. What was the why does a bunny lay an egg, right? And why are we looking for eggs? And none of it made sense to me for the longest time. There's Easter, which is celebrating the rising of Jesus from the grave. And that was the reason of observing Easter, but it never really dawned on us that we were doing. It demonstrates what happens in people groups that get used to just doing things, and you forget why. And when you forget why, you forget a sense of yourself. You lose a sense of origins and beginnings, where you've came from. And then maybe it'll dawn on you the silliness of just doing stuff just to do it, and it has no meaning to you. And that's really the big thing that just talking with Brenda really brought it up, is how many people are doing things and it has no real meaning to them, right? And this goes beyond just being in certain religious circles, because I don't want to make this about one religion or another today. It's just the idea that of doing things and you have no clue why you're doing it, and it has no meaning whatsoever, and just how just devaluing that could really be, because this can be viewed through other spectrums. For example, how many people in this country, the United States, celebrate the 4th of July and have no clue why we celebrate it? And if you watch enough videos on social media, you will see that there are numerous people who have no idea what we're celebrating. And if you can even give them options. It's the 4th of July, it's Independence Day, we're celebrating our independence. Who do we get our independence from? And people will list a whole array of different things, to where we don't even know why we celebrate, right? November 11th, Veterans Day. Why do we celebrate that, right? What did it used to be called? What's the point of the celebration, right? Memorial Day. Why do we celebrate that? Does anybody know? I don't know. In the end, what it basically comes down to, at least for Americans, is well, that's just when we get together and we, cook out on the grill, and we get a couple of days off of work. If we're fortunate enough to work for those type of companies, and that's about the extent of it. Now, if you ask them for the meanings of anything, I don't know, right? How shallow it must be, if we really think about it, our lives can become, because we have removed meaning from almost everything we do. I believe that maybe that could be a part of a lot of the frustration that people deal with in life, because there's absolutely no meaning to it. Even the things that you do out of habit, the things that you do because the people who are around you do it, and it's a form of, cultural inclusion. It gives you a sense of belonging, but it doesn't necessarily give you a sense of meaning. I've had a guest on here before, Alex Patakos, and that's sort of his domain, his realm. He's a psychologist, and logos therapy was sort of his approach, which he got from he studied under Viktor Frankl, which, if many of you are familiar, he was a Jew also, was in the concentration camps during the time of Hitler. He lost family because of this, and he looked at the perspective of going through all that, finding meaning in things. That people who have hope and meaning and out of their lives, they were the ones who tended to last longer than the others, right? That those who gave up hope, had no meaning, saw no meaning whatsoever in anything that was going on. They didn't last long at all, right? They were pretty much gone pretty quickly, and that in his own experience, that he was determined to find meaning even in those ugly circumstances, is really interesting. And having read his book, if you haven't read the Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, I encourage you to do it. There's a lot of very profound things written in there, and there's a lot of ethos involved, because this is from a guy that you can say, you can't accuse him of being, in safety in his armchair writing some, hypothetical philosophical thing. This man went through. He went through these concentration camps, and he's talking about the meaning of life. That's something you might want to pay attention to, right? And of course, Alex Patakos was a great guest to talk about all these different things. But that, and plus, just my own experiences, and from talking with Brenda, our society I think, is just starving, absolutely starving, because there's no meaning. And I think that is why so many people are willing to jump onto any and every cause that somehow gets any traction, because they're starving for meaning. They don't care about the right or wrong of the project. They don't, they're not sure. It does. They don't care if, like, it's the right approach, the wrong approach, cause and effects of what does, if you should do it or shouldn't do it. All they know is they want to be a part of something that has meaning. And that can be for good causes, that can be for bad causes. But we're starving for meaning, absolutely starving. And part of it is what she was talking about back in, when she was going through college in the 60s, going to Harvard. You would think you go to Harvard, you get answers, right? Well, that's a surprise. And it's probably just as bad now. You go to some place prestigious doesn't mean you get the answers you're looking for. And it doesn't mean you're going to find meaning, because what's the main message? It's not much different than what she was learning back in the day. There is no real truth. It's relative. It's by certain perspectives, which, is an absolute perspective in itself, but that's a whole nother realm to discuss. Nonetheless, you go looking for answers, they tell you there's not much answers, and if you find something definitive, that's what makes you wrong, right? And nowadays it makes you an oppressor, right? That if you find a certainty about something, well, maybe you're the oppressor, right? But I think that's what makes these extremist approaches very appealing. All right. I think someone might go off on what some would call the far right wing. And I'm talking about the actual far right wing. If it's like someone disagrees with you and you call them alt-right or, the extreme right, just because they disagree with you, you're being dishonest and you need to knock it off. But I'm talking about those like who are really would go to those fringes and are willing to use violence and to force their way. And then you have those who go to the left who are doing the same thing, who willingly will break windows and set cities on fire, right? What's attracting people to that? I think part of it is because we're not allowed to say there's any meaning. And it's like in Brenda's life when she said, and I asked her this, she confirmed it. It's like she was pushing boundaries in hopes of finding boundaries, because no one was putting boundaries in place for her. And this is something I learned quite a few years ago in child psychology, that's what children do. They keep pushing boundaries, and it is the job of the responsible, mature adult to place those boundaries so that you help the child find that boundary and then be able to gain a sense of meaning and control over themselves. It's not that you control the child, you teach the child to control themselves. As she was saying, where, the soul can control the body. It's a similar principle. But now we're on a national scale where we won't tell anybody they have a boundary. We refuse to make any boundaries. It's open season, open boundaries, open borders, if you will, right? To an extreme. Open everything. Nothing is beyond question. Nothing should be said no to. It's open season. Do what you want. And that's supposed to give a sense of freedom. Yet, I am believing there are so many people like Brenda who have been pulled into this, looking for truth, told there's no real truth, and we're starving for meaning. Well, I just want to end this essay segment with, I'm going to give a starting point, and then you can go from there. Wisdom begins in the fear of the Lord. Knowing that there is a God. When you look at creation, it screams to you, someone created it. We instinctively kind of get this idea that there's this creator, right? Brenda was praying to someone she didn't even know it was there, right? When you look at all the nations of the earth, that have existed. And by nations, I mean people groups, right? These tribes and these groups of people. Even if they had multiple gods, if you will, there was always this idea that there was the one creator. And missionaries who've gone abroad that I've read about, they were fascinated by this, that they would find people that were isolated from everyone else in the world, and yet they believed in a creator God. This is kind of a universal theme of all humanity, that there's this idea that there's this creator God. Even groups that haven't heard from other people discerned that there is a God. Maybe we need to start there again. A sense of meaning. Why am I here? Just to exist, to see what happens? Why am I here? Just to pleasure myself as much as I can and hope that will fulfill me? Because a lot of people are bankrupt on that. Maybe we need to start with the Creator, with the God who made us in His image, and start finding our meaning again.
You've been listening to Rage of the Age. If you loved today's podcast, make sure to leave a review on the media you're listening through. Secure future episodes by heading over to rageoftheage.com and clicking the RSS feed button. Until next time, this has been Rage of the Age.